Okay, so you know how in healthcare, if you've ever met a healthcare human, right, they're probably a little bit like dark and a little bit angry on the inside. And one of the first things that they'll tell you if you're like, "Hey, how's your job? Do you like it?" And they'll be like, "Healthcare is broken." But they won't really elaborate a whole lot more. And then you kind of just keep going around and everyone says the exact same thing where they're like, "This system is so messed up," but they don't really say anything else. And everyone knows it's kind of broken and messed up. But that's kind of where the knowledge ends, right? Well, there's a reason for that. Okay. And the reason for that is if you say anything, you kind of get like blacklisted and can't have a job anymore, or your license can be like attacked because people on the internet are crazy. Okay. That's what we're going to be talking about today. It's going to be a little mix of, we're going to review an article from someone named Katie Duke. She's a nurse practitioner on Instagram. She has like a podcast. It's great. The Bad Decisions podcast. But she recently gave out like an article where she goes through her struggles of now finding a job because she has spoken about things and been very involved in like political change and things like that. I'm going to share a story of mine of crazy things that happen when you try to share, anything helpful with the internet that can happen to your nursing license. And then we have our panel here today, our wonderful panel people. They are going to give their insights. We're going to kind of go over things that if you do want to approach talking about these things, maybe like how to do it and what I wish I would have done, what they wish they would have done to maybe keep things a little bit less. So you talk with your board of nursing a lot less and they keep not calling you and being like, "Why are you doing all these things?" You're like, "They aren't doing these things." They're just like, people make fake reports. It's a good time. And just kind of have a story time, general chat about it, okay? No great problems will be solved here today. We're just going to kind of discuss, and maybe you didn't even know this was happening, and then you'll get just as mad as I am about all of this. All right, let's bring in our lovely panel humans. We have Mr. Midwife. We have Bridget, who's currently a ghost. It's one of her wonderful abilities she has in life. We have Nurse Adriane, and we have Lorie. I will leave all of their information down below. You can go check out all these beautiful people who have all sorts of specialties and cool things about them that I will list down below. How are we doing today, friends?
I'm excited to talk about this issue because I think that this is another reason why we're going to, when I share the information I have for nurses and healthcare workers to form unions. This is a very important reason why we lost Bridget to form a union because of specific protections that you may have under the National Labor Relations Act.
Yes. So, and I was wondering if you were going to talk about that. And if not, I was going to. I'll let you because you're so much better at. Also, the too long didn't read of all of this is do not ever work for a union. You will never get a job anywhere else in healthcare. So if you are going to do anything else, okay, just don't do that. All right. Let us know in the chat if you have worked in healthcare. Have you ever been in a situation where either you spoke about you didn't speak about something for fear of your employer retaliating against you, or you would like to be more like vocal in healthcare, but you can't because, like if you're worried about being on social media because like your employer could find you, anything like that. Do let us know if you have any stories, send them our way or leave them in the comments. If you're watching later, let us know. It'll be a good time. Okay. So this is the article that kind of got me thinking about all of this in general, right? If you haven't heard of Katie Duke, I have her socials already listed in the description as well as this article if you want to go read the whole thing. Basically, she's a nurse practitioner and she has had a social media platform. She's like kind of on the beginning of the wave of like nurses being on social media in more of the sense of just like, how like a lot of nurses on social media, which no shade, they're just like, look at me and my cute scrubs. Doesn't my butt look great? Like in a bathroom mirror. And Katie's been more vocal about like, here's the actual issues. While I also look cute, in scrubs. She goes on and she talks about how she's been active with, she works with FIGS, like doing political activism, things like that. And it has been apparently difficult to find a job since all of that has happened, which is interesting, right? So like I said, for a long time on Instagram and stuff, there is a concept that like you can't really talk about what's actually happening in healthcare, right? Nurses don't dispute that patients deserve compassion and respect, but many feel their roles are misunderstood and their expertise undervalued. This is huge, I think, on Instagram, because I think Instagram puts a really weird image out there of what nurses actually do. But the problem is when you try to show what nurses actually do, or whoever in healthcare, you are going to be attacked by the internet or you aren't going to get a job. So that's a bunch. And that leads to This is like a side tangent, but it all kind of leads into like, this is why a lot of, I think, nurses are leaving, because they get sold this image of, you're going to go into the hospital, you're going to run the whole thing, everyone's going to listen to you, and like, you run this entire ship, and just like not how it really, it's not realistic to what nursing is really like, right? So then everyone gets in it, they're like, this sucks, and then they leave. Whereas if we could just be more transparent about like, this is what healthcare is like, maybe people would stay. You know what I mean? Have you guys ever, I guess that can be our first thing that, like, mini thing we can kind of discuss is, did you, going into nursing, feel like you had a good understanding of what it was versus how it was like portrayed? Because I did not, and my mom's a nurse, right? So you would think that, I hear you expressing your frustrations about the career constantly. I'm like, but I've watched Grey's Anatomy, so I know it's not like that. I'm going to go for it anyway. And maybe that was a weird move. What have you guys seen on the panel and also in the chat? And I'll pull up your chats. Did you feel it was accurately represented, first of all?
No, absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No.
I knew exactly what I was getting into because I worked as a union rep. So.
And you did it anyways, which tells us all we need to know about you.
Yeah.
Lorie, do you want to explain more of like what you mean by, no, you didn't really feel like it was an accurate?
Actually, I'm an attorney now, and I feel like every nurse that has ever come to me has said, I never thought I'd be before the board, but yet here they are. And so I have 3 reasons why nurses quit nursing or lose their job. The first is they're the squeaky wheel. They speak up. And they don't speak up with solutions. They speak up with complaints. So if you're going to speak up with solutions. And then secondly, if you are the highest, you have the longest longevity, you're the highest paid on the totem pole, when they're making budget cuts, they're going to find a way to get rid of you. And the third reason is cultural differences. A lot of nurses, it's like a bad fit and they just want to stick it out anyways, but then they get fired. And my favorite saying is, you can always get another job and not another license. But when I went into nursing, like 2 weeks into my career, I was like new, green, terrified, you remember that, and a patient coded. And like my first response was like, oh, thank God it's not my patient. But the more experienced nurses were attending the code, and I was watching my patients and their patients. And one of the nurses came out and said, will you get some equipment from Central Supply? And I'm like, sure, no problem. So I remember the corded phones, and I was standing by the linen cart, and I'm calling Central Supply and saying, could you please bring me, it was Gomco suction. Remember, like back in the day, a suction didn't come out of the wall like it does now. You had to go bring these huge machines up from Central Supply. And the person on the other end of me said, we don't deliver. And I'm thinking, oh my God, why aren't you bringing this life-saving equipment? This man is fighting for his life. The nurses are fighting to save him and resuscitate him, and they won't even bring up the suction. And that's the first clue that I had that something was wrong with nursing. Why would they have at that time the most expensive, highest paid professionals in the nursing department go to Central Supply to get equipment? And so, the next day, my unit manager brought me in, and I was like, what's going on? And she's like, I have to write you up. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Nothing happened. And she said, well, the way you talk to the person from Central Supply, which just means advocating for your patient, AKA advocating for your patients. I was like devastated that my hospital and my nurse manager wouldn't even support me. And that's the first clue I had. Something's wrong with this profession.
Mm-hmm. And if you speak up about it, you're just, it's not going to go well for you.
Exactly.
Right?
And they didn't give me any resources or training on communication or anything. And, why not have an orderly stay in Central Supply to bring equipment up? There's easy answers to this. So then I decided to get my master's, because I thought if I could be a manager, then I would treat my nurses better and this wouldn't happen. So
how did that work out for you? Just out of curiosity.
Well, when you're in management, you're in the middle, and either you conform to administration or you leave. And so I went to law school, and now I have the best job in the world.
We're going to take a hard right out of all of this.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And plug for Lorie's website, friends. She has a great website. I'll leave it linked down below. It's called Empowered Nurses. Can I pull it up? Let's see. Can we do it? We can try. That you can go check out if you are also considering maybe just a different path, or she has a whole list. You said how many different jobs that were like non-traditional?
101. There's 101 ways nurses can become business owners. I mean, ideally, I would see it's right at the top there. Yeah. I ideally would love to have nurses, like patients pick their nurses, and nurses get paid what they deserve, not just come with the room like dietary and housekeeping. And I think that's the way we're going to get our power back by having a separate fee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you're watching this and you're like, wow, there's no hope, there's our hope for the day. Okay, friends, Lorie gave it to us. You can go check out her website and figure out what you're doing with your life. I'll be over there later, figuring it all out. Chad, you also agreed that things were not as they perhaps seemed.
No. As a little kid, I spent some time in a hospital. I had some surgery when I was 8 years old, and I loved the experience. I thought it was great and wonderful, and I thought, well, this is what nursing is all about. And then you get into nursing school, and they're telling you how, you're going to do this and that and the other thing with your patient, and here's the plan of care. And I'm sitting here thinking, if I only have one patient, and if I have 12 whole hours to dedicate to that patient, yeah. But it turns out nursing school is written in this fairy tale land that does not exist. You're lucky if you get 15 whole uninterrupted minutes with any given patient, period, let alone 12 hours to get them the right diet and talk to them about this and rub their back and walk them 50 feet down the hall and back and set your goals. It doesn't happen that way. It just doesn't. Mm-hmm. And one of my first experiences was a little bit like Lorie's. I was working in the operating room, and we had somebody code on the table. And I'll talk about this just a little bit because the doctor has since passed away. But the anesthesiologist is running the code. He's shouting out orders. I'm running. Nurse is running. We're all running around trying to get this situation resolved. And not unlike Lorie's, Central Supply wasn't delivering. At the end of the day, the nurse manager came and started scolding the physician for the way he talked to me. And I turned to her and I said, it was a code. We don't have time for pleasantries. I wasn't offended. We were all doing our job. Totally barking up the wrong tree. Yeah. Who cares how we're being spoken to in the middle of a code? We're trying to save a life. We're just trying to get it done. This isn't the time for pleasantries. I'm sorry, it's not. And so that kind of, eventually I went on, but it's just not what you think it is.
It kind of opens your eyes to the business side of it.
Well, in labor and delivery, there's all these young nurses that come out. I want to play with the babies. That's not what we do in labor and delivery. What we do in labor and delivery, it's gross, it's disgusting, it's scary as hell sometimes. It's not playing with babies.
No, that's the NICU, Chad. Didn't you know? Well, that's all they do is they just play with babies.
Even in the NICU, there's a lot of really scary moments. You're like, moments where you're holding your breath going,
oh, I could never.
And your heart's in your throat and your bowels are on the floor and you're, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah. They kind of paint it as this magical unicorn land of you're going to go to labor and delivery and everything's going to be magical. And these babies it's just going to be perfect. And then, or if you want to work in the NICU, it's just obviously holding cute babies, and peds is just like unicorns and bubbles. It's great.
No, it's not.
Yeah. No one's ever done it.
And I tell you, it's the first time you have a baby die in your arms. It's not what they told you in nursing school. It's not.
And we don't talk about that. And then how many people approach that and then they experience it and then they're out. You know what I mean? Versus if we integrated it more into the culture of talking about it, giving people resources and able to work through that and being like, you're going to encounter this, so that people understandably, if they're like, I just don't want to do that, that's okay. Right. But I feel like a lot of the times the way we portray the profession is just like, this is great, everyone's going to love it. And it's like, no, that's not really how it is. And then we see a mass exodus, and it's just a hot mess. A hot mess. And it sounds like a lot of you in the chat kind of are experiencing the same thing, where it was not exactly, we just aren't very truthful about it, right? And we are not truthful about it for very good reason. So kind of going back to her article, so she kind of goes on to explain that she was working at a hospital, right? She tried to go back and work at the same hospital that she had moved, basically. Katie tried to move back. Since then, her platform exploded, and she had interviews. They said, okay, this is great. However, management kind of caught wind of who they were trying to hire and basically blocked it, and said that somebody in the power structure didn't like Katie's very public speaking platforms and the way she was freely saying what she thought, which was a lot of like, hey, here are the realities of nursing. Hey, we're not very staffed very well. She pointed out she was doing like travel stuff. So she was one of the people who was really talking about, hey, there's no equipment during when like the pandemic was happening. Very like just honest about it. And so it turns out people don't really want to give you a job if that's the way it goes too. And then you kind of get involved in advocacy work, right? And shocker, once again, so she went to go and did this like partnership with FIGS. They went to, I think, Washington, D.C., and they were talking and trying to bring up a point, going to talk to different representatives about like healthcare things. There should be mandated patient ratios so that things are safer, and magically came back the next day, and her like PRN, so like as needed, working here in their job, was like, you don't ever need to come back. Even though it was in an ER that was super duper understaffed. She was one of the most senior people there. They were just like, never mind, don't come back. Which is like probably not a coincidence, because the person said that like literally no one, that never has happened ever before. So that is kind of what you are up against when you go to speak out against things. One of the quotes I thought was interesting from her article is, I wish I could work at a hospital that would allow me to take great care of patients and help train and educate new people coming on board, right? Because a lot of people who have the time and mental brain space to complain about this stuff are not the new people, right? I was not, when I was a new nurse or new nurse practitioner, really, I was so stressed to just like make it through my day. I didn't have the ability to like zoom out and be like, oh, here are the issues. I would like to talk about those, but I'd also like to teach new nurses and new nurse practitioners how to do their job better, because I've done this for a few years. Those usually come around at the same time, is your frustration with the job, but also your ability to like educate well. And you can't really do that because you're not going to be able to keep your job if you're like really honest about most of the stuff. She ends it with like, but it's just unrealistic to be able to do both, which is really sad, because I think we have people who are in a position to be able to advocate the best for patients and for better work conditions, and also train new people who often want to do both, right? But you literally cannot, because if you start advocating, then your job is like, well, either shut up or you're fired or goodbye. Do you guys have any experience with this? And
all the time.
Adriane does, I know.
I just wanted to bring up some stuff about what Lorie and Mr. Midwife were talking about before. And I just want to defend Mr. Midwife when he said gross and disgusting. I saw that somebody got really offended and said that he was in the wrong profession if he thinks that. Mr. Midwife is a great midwife. He loves the mommies. He loves the babies. But sometimes, let's be honest, the bodily fluids and the things you're going to see, it can be gross and disgusting. It just is the way it is.
Which doesn't mean you're in the wrong. Yeah. Which is just.
It's more than just bodily fluids. It's situations and attitudes and the whole, it's not rainbows and unicorns. It's not. It's like I said, it's like Nurse Liz has said, it's more like an ICU for pregnant women. And it's scary sometimes. It really
and I think that almost feeds into kind of the toxic nature of how nurses aren't allowed to talk realistically about their jobs, because you're not allowed to say, this is gross. Like, okay, like meds, like I worked in pediatrics, right? And there was just some things that were just like, it was gross. No one likes to hear like working with children is ever gross, but like if you walk into a poop filled bed that's like a pool, like that is objectively disgusting, right? The child is not disgusting. Something really unfortunate happened to their body that like caused that to happen. But you should be allowed to say like, this is what happens. Like, and you don't have to enjoy that aspect of it, right? I
Everyone
didn't
walks
enjoy.
into a room like, great, I literally
Yeah.
had to scoop up C. diff with a spoon once.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and you don't
This
have to enjoy
is
that.
my dream job.
No,
Yeah,
I mean,
and-
the dream part of it is all the other parts, right? And that's just part of it
But
that comes with it.
And it's okay if a plumber said the same
Mhm.
exact thing, right?
Yeah,
so that's how
exactly.
critical we are. But I think it's, I mean, and honestly, as a union rep, 20 years, I have heard the worst, most gut-wrenching stories and have the absolute most respect for anybody working in labor and delivery, because I couldn't do it, but as far as the gross part, look how many people pass out. Dads pass out, or I'm sure moms, if they're same-sex couple. My L&D rotation story is about slapping the crap out of a dad who passed out, and the doctor was just like, basically beat him until he wakes up. Because, the guy, he just dropped to the floor. Right. So again, that's a shock. That's because it's something like really traumatic to see that triggers an amygdala response. Right. So it is what it is. We have to stop this narrative and expectation that it's, you're going to like Candyland. It's not. There are horrible, horrible things that L&D and midwives deal with and see that I just couldn't do myself, right? I just don't even have, we all know I have zero bandwidth for kids and babies, like, because I can't see that suffering, and I just would flip out. So, 100% respect to anybody who works in that field. But again, there's a lot of things when you pull off somebody's, when you go, right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's just like when you're in the ER or you get a patient, you pull out their sock that's full of maggots, there's a giant wound. It's like we get to have our own vernacular about how we express it and how we respond, whether it's like, oh, great, thank you to the CNA. You guys gave that patient a car wash, because that we don't know what else to call that. Like that level of like detailed job on the body. Basically, when somebody comes in and our job is to promote respect and dignity. And that's what we're doing. But we also have to have a means to cope. And this is where there's a collision course, I think, especially because of social media, where now the menu has gotten so big, the avenues of input and people feeling like, oh, I have a right to say this. Well, you don't know. And even younger nurses coming in the COVID nurses going straight to ICU, and they're crumbling when they get floated to med-surg, because they don't know how to manage time. They don't know how to manage care. They don't know how to manage patients. And then they get on social media and talk about that, So yeah, this is not, it just is what it is. So, just imagine it's somebody like the plumber. He could say gross and disgusting, and nobody's going to say, wow, plumber can't say that.
Well, and
normalize.
Let me just interject here. Quite often, labor and delivery is 95% boredom, 5% sheer panic. There's humdrum, normal deliveries, things go great, and in a split second, a third to a half of her blood volume's on the floor. I am literally elbows deep inside her body, trying to clamp her down as we're calling physician, wheeling her out the room. There's a trail of blood out the room into the ORs. We're doing an emergency hysterectomy to save her life. They don't teach you this in nursing school. And it's when you walk back in the room, it is literally a bloodbath. There's blood everywhere. She's alive. She's pale, but she's alive. And there's nothing pleasant about any of that. There isn't.
Yeah.
There's nothing that really prepares you for the amount. One, it's what you will see and witness is one part, but then the second part is zero training or attention given to coping mechanisms of, okay, how do you deal with it? All we get is like, nurses are calm. Nurses are not hysterical people, and when we've seen, and for the public, it's not in healthcare, not in hospitals, working in hospitals. There used to be these brilliant people called educators, nurse educators, and there would be, 10, 5, there'd be one for every specialty, one for OB, one, for each type of department. And those were really a resource person for new nurses, for nurses transferring in. That's gone. There are very few hospitals that really have a robust, effective education department where they're not having them do a bunch of process improvement junk that other people should do. And so I think it's a really frightening place in healthcare. And nurses are then expected to like know everything. Okay, I got to flex. I can't pretend like I don't know how to do this, or I don't know who to ask because I'm a traveler, right? This is why if we are staff in hospitals, it is really important that we're respectful to everybody on the team and not give that crappy assignment to the traveler, to the float nurse. Like, we've got to stop that, but that's also just a cultural side effect of hospital culture. But
Well, and that
educators,
leads
And
into
everything falls on nurses. And going back to kind of what Lorie was saying, like, it just seems so mind-boggling to streamline processes, to expand other departments to support nurses, but no, everything has to fall on nurses. So for example, when I was working in the hospital, they got rid of phlebotomists, right? Again, it's a business. Even if it's a non-for-profit hospital, let's get rid of phlebotomists. Now nurses, you're doing the blood draws. They didn't want, and this is way before COVID, so COVID is not an excuse. Environmental services had too many rooms to clean. So now nurses were expected to take the linens out at the beginning and end of their shifts. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, really? Like, now we're taking out linens and we have to take out the trash. And if we didn't do it, the night shift would tell on us and be like, they didn't take out the linens. Like, so now I'm doing housekeeping, phlebotomy. And then when I would come up with suggestions, for example, like, okay, we have 6 patients. Can we get the techs to do at least vitals? Oh, well, they don't really know. They're not able to assess. So it's not safe for them to do vitals. I'm like, well, what if we give them parameters? Like, we say, hey, call the nurse if systolic is greater than this or lower than this. And if diastolic, blah, blah, blah. Like, we would come up with solutions, but they don't care because, again, at the end of the day, like Liz said, it's a business. What else? Oh, environmental services also did not clean up bodily fluids like vomit or stool. Okay, I understand, maybe blood.
Right.
Okay. But what, I mean, I guarantee you janitors at Disney are cleaning up vomit and stool. So why can't the hospital environmental services? And it's not that I'm saying we're above that, but we just have so much on our plate that, come on, like, help us a little. But no, so it's like they keep giving us and giving us and giving us, and they don't take anything away. And it's the same way, more patients, nothing was giving.
Well,
and then you get people.
Brigette, we're not above that, but me and housekeeping have an agreement. They don't take my vitals. I don't take out their trash. It's really simple. I'm sorry. I have a bachelor's degree. I have a master's degree. I've been to school for this. I'm not taking out the garbage.
And it's like,
there is a little bit of a hierarchy. There is.
And then, even if it wouldn't be done, so it's like it needed to be done.
And what message does that send to the patient when I've just mopped your floor, now I'm going to come change your wound dressing?
And even if there's not like a hierarchy, it's just, where does your time better spent doing? You know what I mean? Like,
you're going to pay me $35 an hour to take out the trash. That doesn't make sense. It just doesn't.
Yeah. And then I think this is when people get frustrated, and then they take to social media, and then this is when you get fired because you're making their business look bad. Right. And so I think that's kind of all leading back to, you can't mention anything, and then it just, so no one talks about it. Right. And then people are like, oh, how do you like your job? And you're like, it's a nightmare. Like, but I can't say anything else, because if I say anything else, like, it could come back to people, and we don't really want that. And I wanted to interject, going back like a little while, just in case people are watching this and think we're just trying to complain about patients. I don't think you should ever go on the internet and complain about your patients, right? Or like make it in any way, like any identifying details, anything like that. This is more of like complaining about, like, just discussing the reality of situations without any identifiers, right? Please never do anything that could ever get back to like what people are identifying, because you don't need to talk about the actual patient. But mostly like just talking about the situations at work that make it unsafe, that now you are expected to all of a sudden be the housekeeper, be the phlebotomist, be the nurse, be the everything on top of each other. That's not what's getting talked about. And if you do, then you get in trouble. But in terms of like discussing patient situations, we're not trying to say you should go out and do that. My rule of thumb, in case you're curious, because they teach you in school, like, oh, be careful with social media, but that's useless, right? That's just totally useless. If you wouldn't say it to their face and like as if you were giving bedside report, then just don't say it about them at all on social media in general, right? So if you would feel comfortable, in bedside report, giving that same information to another nurse in front of the patient, there you go. Like, then that's probably fine to share on social media. If not, just like, don't do it, because
Yeah, if you're speaking of, so there's some case law from actually 2011 NLRB on this. So if you're engaged in concerted activity, meaning that you're engaged in, or it could be whistleblower protections as well, which is another reason why everybody should get really behind some good whistleblower laws, is if you're talking about working conditions, pay, safety conditions, right? And they are very specific issues, and you are allowed. So there are some exceptions here. Now, does that mean your hospital's not going to still fire you and see if you're going to file a charge or sue them or a whistleblower? Absolutely. Employers are going to do whatever they want, whether they're breaking the law or not, and they're going to convince you that you are. Now, the NLRB has had some rulings from Facebook, because when I was a nurse, it was really, like when I started, it was a lot of Facebook. And I can tell you that the one time I thought a hospital executive was actually going to punch me in the face, that I had finally broken them, that I had finally pushed somebody to the point where like they were going to physically attack me, was when I posted a photo of the meal room, the nutrition room on Facebook during a contract campaign, and then reported them to the health board, where there was just food trays all over the floor, stacked everywhere, because they didn't, again, have enough nutrition services people, because hospitals are very sensitive about PR. They're very sensitive. And this case with Duke is very interesting, because this was on like a reality show. So you would actually think that the hospital would like not want to do that. And they may not do that today. I kind of don't think they would do that today. Back then, it was 10 years ago, they pulled it off. But really, to fire a nurse on, in that, have it be online, her crying, being filmed, crying, walking out of the hospital, I kind of think they would make a different choice today, although it's just as draconian. But because that would just be immediately all over social media, even beyond what it was then. But if you are in, it's just like, so let me pull this up. So you can, concerted activity, you have the right to address work-related issues and share information about pay, benefits, and working conditions with your coworkers, with a union. You have a right to take action with one or more coworkers. Using social media can be a form of protected concerted activity. You have the right to address work-related issues and share information about pay, benefits, and working conditions with coworkers on Facebook, YouTube, and other social media. So there's been several rulings. There was a ruling in 2011 by the NLRB. There's been a few more recent rulings, but again, it can't be false. It has to be factual, for one, right? And you should also make it you have to be sensitive, right? But we know that what social media likes, especially TikTok, is we like that shock value. It elicits that, right? So it's really important that people posting, workers, nurses, anybody in healthcare, that they really are thinking first. Save that as a draft, sit on that video, look at it later. Is this the best way to express this? Can I convey this some other way?
Well,
make up a situation.
I'm doing a lot of talking, and I apologize, but I think as a nation, we can agree the healthcare system is broken. This is why in 2008 we passed Obamacare, because it was an attempt at a fix. And before that, Clinton tried to do something about it, because the system is broken. If you turn to social media, we who work the front lines will tell you how it's broken and how to fix it. We'll tell you what the problem is. My question is, are you listening?
They're not.
Are you going to, you agree the system's broken, same as I agree the system's broken. I'm telling you what's broken. Are you going to fix it? You want more nurses in the hospital? You want to fix this? You want to fix that? I'm telling you how to fix it. You're not listening to me.
I feel like most of the decisions are being made by people with MBAs that have no idea what healthcare is, and they're not getting input from healthcare, like at least the nurses, people on the floor, because trust me, I have that show, what is it, that Secret Boss, where they go and they do Like if one of those CEOs would follow one nurse for a day, they would figure out how broken it is.
Yeah.
That's my point, but they don't. So if you turn to social media, we will tell you what the problem is.
Mm-hmm. The people who are willing to do it, which then goes into if you're even willing to go on there, because you are risking your license and your job if you do go on social media and talk about it. So as an example, just from like my own life of kind of like just things in case you're unaware, like just keep it in the back of your mind that people are crazy, right? So I worked in primary care for 3 years as a nurse practitioner, while all of which during that I had like my YouTube channel, right? And I cannot tell you how many times I got phone calls from the board of nursing because people had looked up my name online and then called my licensing board in North Carolina where I lived and like reported through my NPI number, whichever you can Google for anyone, by the way, you can Google anyone's NPI number. And they would make random complaints like about me, had never been to my office, like, and that's how we ended up getting it all like shut down, was then we could prove that like this person, they wouldn't give their name or they would make an anonymous tip and like blah, blah, blah. And I had to like call the North Carolina Board of Nursing and be like, look, I have this social media thing. I say things, people hate me. And so they call, but they report your license, which then turns into a whole hot mess. I was fortunate that my employer, I worked at a private practice and I was able to be like, look, like, here's the situation. So like, otherwise they told my employer, like they contacted her even without, so I had to talk to her too. But if you worked in a big healthcare system, they would tell them that, hey, this employee has a bunch of reports against them. Random people on the internet, like they don't tell you that. They just say that you have a complaint filed against your license, which then you can later get cleared. But like, that happens and people are crazy. So just be cautious. Don't use your real name. That would be my biggest advice on that one, is use a different name. If you're going to use your name, goodness gracious, make up your last name. But I would just use a totally different pseudonym. You know what I mean? So that people cannot find it back to you, because they will go online and find this stuff. And also call your boards of nursing. When I moved to my new state, I literally called them and I said, hi, I have had this issue in the past where people have reported things. I'm just going to tell you ahead of time. And they were receptive to it. They were like, oh yeah, that happens. That happens a lot. Apparently it happens a lot with physicians. Like people will look up their name and then report their practice and like do all of these crazy things, which then if you don't work at an employer that's willing to work with you on that, that turns into an issue, right? Because people will go and review bomb your practice based on like what you're saying on social media. You know what I mean? Yeah. AdCamp has the right idea. Somehow I think this might not be your given name in life, but go you have the right idea. You know what I mean? So just be conscious of that there are weird real life implications. So contact your board of nursing. I don't know if Lorie has any better ideas of how to go about the legal side of it to protect yourself when they come after you. Mine was just to call them and let them know. And I've had people report my license in Pennsylvania, which is funny because I have not practiced clinically. But I did warn them ahead of time. So the people like literally, she called me and she was like, we don't actually have a location for you working in this state, but we get reports about it. I'm like, yes. Isn't that fascinating how I've done terrible things to people in this state when I also don't clinically practice here? So just, be cautious.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of self-reporting at all. I think they can turn it around to you and say, yeah. And, the nurses that I have that think that they're doing the right thing by doing that, they get in more trouble. So, even if it's the hardest thing in nursing is these he said, she said situations. If you make an off color comment and get reported, how do you prove a negative that you didn't do that?
Yeah. So don't do what I said. Don't do it.
Again, I'm not a fan of self-reporting.
Go back.
Unless it's something that you have to self-report. But otherwise, no. They're not your friend. They're there to protect the consumer, not you.
Well, and it could be as simple as I was on with someone else yesterday. Scott and I were, and I said, because Scott and I are friends, because we are who we are, we call and talk to each other once a week. And I said, in our conversation, he usually straightens me out. Well, he's a gay man. He could take that really offensively. And in a patient situation, in a hospital, or anybody can take anything wrong. They can just take anything wrong. So
Yep. Just be careful out there, friends. Be careful.
Can I share a ridiculous story once? It's
I'm
the
ready.
most ridiculous complaint. My manager pulled me aside one day because I literally was writing on the whiteboard. And, you know, I'm Latina. I have a butt and thighs, you know, I'm heavy on the bottom, but
First
I
of all, how
literally,
dare you?
I literally was just writing on the whiteboard and I exited the room. Didn't think anything of it. The patient's girlfriend was in there. So my manager turns me around. She's like, Bridget, the girlfriend came to me and said that you bent down seductively in front of them, kind of like the bend and snap and like the Reese Witherspoon. I was like, I swear to God, I didn't even like bend over. Like I was just writing on the whiteboard. So that was, even the fact that she came to me and was like, did you bend over? Like, God for, you know, in nursing, we have to bend over a lot. But that was one situation where I did not bend over that day. And I was just like, wow.
A mess. A whole
My
mess.
point.
I have
That's
to
my
walk
point.
in that room at like all times, not turn my behind to her.
That's a mess. Hello, Chelsea. Welcome.
Hello.
Do you have any thoughts as you're just joining us? Also, I don't know. Alina said, don't they have to go through an investigation before informing employers? I don't know. Mine didn't. I just came into work one day and my boss was really confused. She's like, a bunch of people said you're operating on people in our office. I was like, what? Like, that was what people had said in the complaint, that I had unsafe sterile procedures. She's like, you don't cut people open here. I don't think, because that was our agreement. I don't chop people open and I do all of her pap smears. So she was real confused. And I was like, oh boy, this is a conversation that we will have. But so anyway, just be careful because people are crazy on the internet, and they also review bombed the practice, and it was.
That's just so sad. You know,
A
that's
whole
very
thing.
scary to me to hear. And in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, what should my pseudonym be?
Yeah. No, it was like, I don't
Well-
recommend anyone, if you are in, especially as a nurse practitioner, like as a advanced practice provider, to use your real name, because the amount of awful, and I'm not even like a big creator. I can't imagine if you have a big, huge platform, how many complaints they must get.
I don't use my real name. Nobody knows where I practice. I'm very vague. I never mention my practice by name. I never mention my doctors by name. I'm as vague as I can possibly be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Don't
It'll
film at work
someday
either,
come back.
because it's real easy to figure that out.
It'll bite me in the ass someday, I'm sure. But for right now, I'm doing all I can.
One day when Adriane turns on you, it's not going to be a good day.
No, I mean, and this is a reason, you know, I mean, I was in HR over 50 times in 12 years. And, you know, I had a couple times a termination notice in front of me that got ripped up in front of HR's face. And, you know, it's very important to know your rights. Now, again, I practiced in California, and I put a link up there to the 3 main laws that are used in California for nurses and regulation. There's a Nurse Practice Act. You know, it's our job and duty to be patient advocates. So if we are in the process of exercising our duty as patient advocates, and this is California, so you got to know your Nurse Practice Act, which some states don't really have a Nurse Practice Act, like my state, where everything's just up to interpretation. And so it's very important to know the state, the laws that you're in, and what kind of protection you may have, and what is the exact issue. But I always had receipts, and whether it was posting a flyer about a union activity or a picket or a strike vote, and then those flyers were, you know, ripped down by managers all through the hospital, and I had witnesses, but yet people were allowed to post, you know, about they're selling cookies and candy and all the crap parents sell for their kids, or, you know, whatever Avon books were laying around. If that's the case, those are federal protections. So if you're, you know, in a union situation, you're federally protected, where the employer allows employees to talk about other things besides work issues and post other information, right? I shared with you guys on now I want to precede this issue of social media with bumper stickers. So there are cases of employees being fired for having bumper stickers on their cars. This goes pretty kind of far back for political campaigns, and then parking their cars on the employer's property, not just hospitals, right? So employers can't, if you're most states are at will. So, I mean, employers can make different rules and laws but they could be found to be egregious. But people also need to really understand that your First Amendment right is not what you think it is. First off, most people have no idea what freedom of speech is. You're not entitled to freedom of speech in your workplace. That does not apply, right? It doesn't apply. Just like, if you're in the military, you're owned by the military, right? There's a lot of settings where that does not apply, and it's really important to understand where it applies and where it doesn't. So freedom of speech is not really something that's a good legal defense. First off, and if Lorie, if you have a different thought on that, let me know.
Well, and you can get fired because everywhere's at will, right? Except for Montana. So if you don't work in a union, they can just be like, we don't like your face today. Bye.
Yeah.
And
you can get fired
legit.
for any reason. And the only protection you have is a violation of age, sex, race, or religion. And that's it.
Right. So there was a case during the Bush Kerry Edwards campaign in, when was it, 2004? When was that? Was it? So there was a case where an employer didn't like that their employee had flipped off the Bush motorcade or something like that, or it may have been the Trump motorcade. There's a couple examples here, but so the person was fired for that because the employer thought that was disrespectful and didn't agree. That actually happened here in Virginia, and that case was upheld for the employer based on the at-will status and, I'm sure completely corrupt court system here in Virginia. But, the politics matter. It matters who the judges are. It matters what's going on with the National Labor Relations Board. So I'll give you guys an example. One of the lengthier write-up I had, I worked for a Catholic hospital. I worked for Catholic Healthcare West, which then became Dignity Health, which is now Common Spirit. And it's one of the larger healthcare companies in America. And I was written up by my manager, who had been a prior union activist, but she was just trying to figure out any way to write me up. And I got called into HR, and they handed me this write-up that on it, she had been, clearly very angry when she wrote this, and said that I was being given a final written for failure to embody, and I can't remember the other word, but failure to embody the teachings of Jesus Christ in my workplace.
There you go.
Yeah. And so that, I really wish they had just let me take that case, because I would have really liked that one, because we would have really taken that pretty far in religious freedom. So there are some situations. So I basically flipped out in HR on them about that, because I'm not a Christian, for one, and that's not part of my job description. So, and the way it was worded was completely insane. And why HR even bothered to bring me in, I have no idea. But this happens all the time, and people do get terminated and get written up, and they, they don't have the protection of being in a union or having somebody be with them. In that case, I had the union rep there, and I mean, again, we just ripped that one up right in front of their face. And then they wanted to rewrite the write-up, and that wasn't allowed. So again, it's very important. Now on social, yeah, I know. I mean, I got kicked. Look, I could tell a lot of stories about it. I'm not going to go into it. But anyways, that's for another day on my channel. I will share my other story. But I like to question things. I like to question like the race and ethnicity of certain religious figures. That's not always appreciated either. So it's important to understand what your rights are in the job, and what are you being, if you're being written up or if you are being harassed, right? And it's the bad Catholic in you. I know it's right. It's terrible. I mean, my mother would have turned over in her grave. She was Catholic. So know your rights, you guys, and form a union. For God's sakes, form a union. That's what I'm saying.
They can't fire you nearly as easily if you're in a union.
Well, it's like when I was a union organizer, I would tell workers like, geez, they would say that, well, I'm religious. I don't know if my religion will allow me to do this. And I said, you know what? Jesus was a carpenter. They have a great union. I mean, what can I say? It's like solidarity. It's like when we stick together, we're stronger. I do want to say, though, one of the benefits of being in a union is that you can have language in your contract that actually prohibits or somehow impacts the employer's right or ability to create social media policies. So you can put language in your contract. And I see that this is happening more and more commonly because some of these NLRB charges have been dropped by unions when employers decided we're just going to erase our social media policy and not retract this termination, et cetera, or write up on employees. So you have leverage. You have leverage.
For sure. Also, this is messed up. Alina said, recently my coworkers and I were told not to speak in Tagalog while at work.
Yeah, that's completely illegal now. That's completely illegal. Now, I know Kaiser used to be a very English-only speaking organization. I will say that. And they actually had English tests for employees at one point of all job classifications. And, again, there's been some pretty clear rulings on that. Now, if it is obviously any talk, if it's loud, if it's disruptive, if it's keeping patients awake at night, if there is an impact, sure. But if patients don't like it or your coworkers don't like your speech, that's not that, and it's not the English language, and that's a clear case right there. You have a case. I mean, I would take that and run with it and document it. I would get the employer to document it. And this is another tip, you guys, when you verbally are told things or verbally feel like you're being harassed by your manager, but they're not willing to email you, or you have conversations with them, memorialize those conversations in an email. So whether it is, hey, I'm writing this letter to HR, I'm writing to my manager. I just want to reiterate that you reprimanded me, this person, this person, this person at this time date outside this room for speaking Tagalog. And can you please clarify and give me the policy for this? They're going to freak out, one, that you memorialized it. They're going to try and backtrack, or they're going to ignore you, which is another thing that a lot of managers do. I've noticed in the hospitals, they just ignore people. But memorialize those conversations so that you have a record, because then you're giving that person an opportunity to refute what happened, clarify what happened, or say, oh, you know what? Sorry, no big deal, and drop it.
Dumb. There's no excuse for it. Yeah, my boss's excuse was for her to see if we needed help or not. Something petty. Yeah, that's not a real. No.
I mean, did they speak Tagalog or
No. I mean, I think they were saying oh, well, how am I supposed to know if I can help you if you aren't speaking English? Because I only understand English. You know what I mean? No, you're allowed to.
No, they don't speak.
They speak because I will ask you for help.
Yeah, exactly. I will ask you for help.
I was going to say, if I need it, because if you speak Spanish, even though technically I'm not supposed to be interpreting because you have to have that certification, but they had no problem with, come on, be a team player, go help this physician, blah, blah, so when it's convenient to them, they want you to speak Spanish or whatever language they need.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, the ANA doesn't do anything. In school, we learned how much the ANA protects and advocates for nurses and patients. That's an excellent joke.
So Adriane, you were talking about how it's more voices together. It's important to kind of band together and stand up, which brings me to a story from my own personal life. This was, let's see, after the pandemic. This would have been in the fall of 21, I think, right around the time of the vaccine mandates coming down and stuff like that. And we had a mass exodus of staff in my unit whenever the vaccine mandates came down. And so we were very short staffed. We were bringing in a lot of travelers and stuff, but all of the staff that left were obviously our experienced nurses. And so we were left with a bunch of inexperienced staff, especially on night shift. And so our manager was pulling day shift nurses to work night shifts, charge on night shifts, things like that. We are not a union. We don't have any unions or anything like that. And so that was going on for a few months. And basically all of the day shift staff were getting really tired of being pulled to work the night shift. And we, a lot of people didn't feel like they had a choice. They felt like whenever their manager came to them and said, hey, we have this need, we need an experienced nurse on nights, can you work night shift? It didn't feel like a choice to them. They felt like they were going to be letting down the entire team, the entire unit, if they didn't step in to help fill that role. And anyways, so this went on for a few months, and I just kept on hearing from these staff about how burnt out they were feeling, how they didn't want to do this anymore, but they didn't feel like they could, speak up or say anything. And I just kept hearing it, and I kept hearing it. So one day I decided to take this to our manager, like have a sit down with her and let her know, like, this is how people are feeling. Like, I don't know what they are telling you, but I'm sure that it's probably not what we are hearing on this side. And so I want you to know that everybody's getting really like tired of this, and they're getting really burnt out, and they do not want to work. And she, like, the thing is, like, we are hired for a specific position, right? We were not hired to work night shifts, so they couldn't really make us work it. Anyways, I got my like ass handed to me in that meeting, and told that they were basically like, who are you to represent all of these nurses? If they have a problem, they can come to me. And I tried to explain, like, they're not going to come to you. Like, they came to me because they feel like I'm a leader that they can talk to on the unit. And so now I am bringing those concerns to you. And yeah, that landed me in HR. Having the conversation with my manager led to a few weeks later having a meeting in HR. And it's just,
They really pumped you up for like advocating, right? They really they're like, great job. Yeah. So it's really important. And I'm sorry that happened to you. So this is extremely common, right? There's people, and let me tell you guys that are watching and future viewers, there are people that are leaders. Leaders are not people that are self-designated. Leaders are chosen by their coworkers. Leaders are people who are chosen by other people who say, I respect you, I will follow you. Like in this case, what Chelsea's saying, right? So her colleagues, respected her. They chose her as a leader. A manager is not a leader, first off. And I've told many managers this. So that's just gaslighting. That's gaslighting, right? But here's a tip. Here's a tip is always, as much as you can, phrase and place your issue that you're bringing to management in the context of patient safety. Place it in the context of patient safety as much more than, the worker side, or that, hey, or it can be competence as well, which again is patient safety, right? It could be, well, we don't have these staff at night and there's these extra duties night shift does. We're not trained. We're not oriented. Mentioning the words training, orientation, patient safety, patient endangerment. We want to prevent patient harm. What's safest for the patients is this, right? This is, and that will give you some protection, possibly against whistleblower laws. It depends on the laws of your state. So again, know those laws of your state and your Nurse Practice Act. Like we could lean on so like, for example, in your situation, this was a tactic that I took in the union. And it was very original. Nobody else was doing this. So we would have the workers bring up these issues based on safety, patient safety. We are patient advocates under the Board of Registered Nursing. And I linked all the statutes under Title 22 and Title 16 in California. And that's separate from the Board of Registered Nursing. And that's a licensing for the hospital. And we're bringing these safety issues to you. This is how management is respond. Now the management's a nurse. So guess what? If the manager who is an RN does not respond to create a safe patient environment after knowledge, and there's language, it's very specific. If you have knowledge of patient abuse or patient safety issues, you could be liable. So then we would report those nurses, those managers, to the state of California licensing board as violating Title 16 and Title 22. And then we would report them to the Board of Registered Nursing as endangering patient lives. And then we would give them the whole case, right? And they were both agencies were very freaked out about it. They were like, what do we do? Right. And I had them call me. I had many calls from different these offices, you can't be writing up managers. And I said, oh yeah, I can. I go, it's not retaliatory. I'm letting you know that they are aware of patient safety issues and they are taking no action. And isn't that a violation of Title 16 and Title 22 in the Nurse Practice Act? Tell me it's not. Show me where it's not. And then, you know, and then we would CC all of this to like the state legislator for that area, the state reps for that area, to the city council for that area, and let them know. Now, so like you're saying, these boards reach out to the employers. So guess what? They reached out to the employers. Some of those managers probably got a little stressed because now we made something relevant to them personally. And when you make something relevant to somebody personally, it changes things. So now they're going to think, because now they got managers quitting and leaving and saying, we're not going to go up against the union. We're not going to go up against this group of workers. I'm going back to the floor. We had several managers go back to the floor and become union members. They left. They were like, I'm out. Transfer me to another one of your hospitals. Get me out of this place because these workers are not screwing around. And you, the company, are putting me as the manager. Like, you're putting me in an no-win situation.
But see, Chelsea makes my point exactly. I'm telling you what's wrong. I'm telling you how to fix it. Are you listening?
Mm-hmm.
And
That was
even when
another part of the-
so my hospital doesn't have unions. So I would go, and I was in the middle, when I was working on the floor, I was in the middle of my master's program for nurse educator, writing a ton of papers. So I was already writing papers on like how much nurse turnover costs and how much like the patient, how each additional patient is correlated with poor patient outcomes, right? So I had like 5, sometimes 10 pages worth of research. They're probably like, what's going on? Like, why is she? So I would present it in that format because I knew it was those mind games. I was like, they don't care about us, but maybe if I can frame it that, hey, you are losing this much money in nurse turnover and patients are affected by your actions. And again, we don't have a union, and I don't, like Nurse Adriane, I don't know if it's my ADHD or what, but I just don't have it in me to go all the way up to like the nursing board. Like, it's just not in me. I tried, you know, I went to management, spoke to them. They did nothing about it. I would sometimes talk to our CEO of that campus. Nothing happened. So, you know, at a point, it's like, it's almost like it's that learned helplessness. I believe it was Martin Seligman, where it's like you just try and try and try and try, and then you just kind of lay down because you're like, this is not working. But for me, like I needed to transition. I was like, I can't put up with this. So that's why I left bedside.
When you're exhausted from the job anyway, that they're not giving you enough resources to actually do. And then if you want to fight back against it, they're like, this is going to be absolutely awful.
No, it is. It's tough. Look, I was in a very unique situation because I had organized this hospital. I had a very long relationship with the nurses and all the workers of the hospital. So, you know, I had the trust of a couple thousand workers and then workers at other hospitals where I was the rep because I could produce results. And because I thought outside the box, I was like, hey, do 10 of you want to go picket the nurse manager's house, the chief nurse executive's house? We don't have to give 10-day notice to do that. That'd be fun. How's that sound? How about if we go where does she go grocery shopping? Let's go out there and fly her to the parking lot, you know? So, you know, I make it fun, but also it's good to have templates. Templates are important. Hey, Irene, you know, for a lot of this. So you guys can set up template letters that you can just boom, shoot off to the board. But again, this is really under the guise. There are no like, who was that guy? David Horowitz? Was he like the consumer protection guy? Who was a consumer, or is that a serial killer? Sorry, I can't remember. You know, like we don't have like that really advocate, like that icon of like advocacy for nurses and patients. And what the public needs to understand is that when you protect nurses, you are protecting patients.
Exactly.
It goes hand in hand. Everything that you're seeing 99% on social media that nurses or healthcare workers are griping about is about the frustration of not being able to do their job or some impediment or harassment or pay or benefits or something that is putting them at odds with what they want to be doing. Mm-hmm. We want to be providing the best patient care. I miss patient care. I loved my patients. It was never my desire to spend time in HR, to be doing union stuff, you know, and organizing workers and using all my break time to do that. That just was part of what we had to do to be able to practice and provide the care we wanted. Yeah. And it's very sad in states, you know, places where there's no unions or you don't have any advocacy because everything is happening behind these walls, right? And nobody sees what's behind those walls.
Mhm. But I think, like you said, framing it in the totally shifting how we talk about it is a good idea to make it a patient safety issue, because then it's not like oh, my job is so hard, poor me, blah, 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 because underneath all of that, it's just like, I would like to be able to do my job. I just need
Yeah.
to
And
require.
But not, even that is not always successful, even though it's a
Yeah.
more it's a more suitable approach for what their interests are. It
Oh, yeah,
doesn't
no,
always
they still
work
will come
either.
after you for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
they'll still, and you can have a hard time finding a job, all of the things. Lorie brought up a good point in the private chat about being a whistleblower. Do you have any information you want to start off with on that? So a whistleblower is just when you're going behind the scenes and like announcing, like letting the public know of an unsafe situation, essentially.
File
It's
that under things
actually,
that I've dreamt about.
yeah, actually talking to the Department of Health or some other government entity about patient safety. And many of the states have protections for whistleblowers. So if they try and fire you because you reported them to the Department of Health or whoever, there's some protections there that protect nurses for speaking up.
Are they specific to
question.
nurses? Because I found this. Because when I was looking up this up earlier, I found like whistleblower information, but it looked like it was just protecting you if you worked for like a government agency, or is it all of Health and Human Services? Does that encompass normal
It would be a
hospitals?
state statute. It wouldn't be
Okay,
federal.
not a
And that
federal
you're
one.
looking at federal there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Lorie, I have a question. This might be for you. It might be for Adriane or for both of you. But so even let's say you are under protection of a whistleblower state or whatever. I mean, we just discussed how these are at will, like everywhere is at will, right? So
Right.
surely, I mean, listen, if I'm speaking purely for myself, they are going to be able to find something to fire me about. With like the mouth that I have on me, they're going to be able to find something just like that. That's like, okay, no, that's not the reason we're letting you go. This is the reason why we're letting you go.
Yeah, but once again, they can try and find something, and but once you're under that whistleblower protection, first of all, you have to ask yourself, why are you still there? I mean, if the care was so bad that you felt like you had to report them, why are you staying there and putting up with this? But you do have protection, and in Indiana, where my office is, we don't do employment law, but we do refer them to somebody who does. And there is I think it's McLaren is the case that gives them protection.
So my question for you, Lorie, about with the whistleblower thing that I couldn't figure out an answer to was what if the thing that you're saying is unsafe is there's no law saying that it actually is unsafe, right? Because a lot of the stuff is like, hey, I'm going to go out here and talk about how my patient ratios were terrible and they're reducing all the other staff, so I'm having to take all of this on and like this isn't safe. But by law, it's not a law that they have to have better ratios, right? So can you still go under a whistleblower thing if they're not actually breaking rules? It's just unsafe generally.
Yeah, there may not be a law saying, especially California is the only state that has mandated ratios, but in other states, if you find that, and it's not for nursing homes in California either. So, but if you do find that patient safety is of concern because of chronic short staffing, every facility has a duty to reasonably staff their facility. And if it's not staffed properly, and patients are suffering as a result, then they need to be reported.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing to lean on, I would say, in addition to what Lorie's saying, is OSHA. So you either have patient safety, right, which then is covered by CMS. It could be considered fraud. I mean, I've often wondered on the fraud part of CMS if there's a possibility of filing lawsuits against hospitals for fraud based on the DRGs. So when you go from having 4 patients a nurse or 6 patients a nurse to 10, how are you actually providing that same amount of care given the DRG reimbursement for CMS? So that's just my fantasy lawsuit I'd like to see. I'm just putting that out to the universe. And the other thing is, if you're using, so you have patient safety, or worker safety. So if you can show unsafe conditions that are covered under OSHA, or the states like California, several states have their own OSHA department, you are regardless covered by federal OSHA. The states can only make OSHA laws if they have their own OSHA program, like California, that are better or the same as federal OSHA. So you're always covered by federal OSHA minimum. So if you know federal OSHA, then you can look at that. So that was something that I leaned on heavily more than the state licensing was during COVID. Most of the 200 complaints I filed against hospitals in the 18 months were OSHA complaints versus state licensing complaints. And that's what, and OSHA comes in with some power. I mean, they can arrest, they can charge. If you're not giving them the information they need as an employer, they can shut your doors. They can have the DA charge you. They come in with some big, power. That's a little different. And their fines may not be as high or what we'd want them to be, but everything pretty much is public that they do, where what's happening with licensing oftentimes is not as public. So think of it in terms of, is there an employee safety issue, or is there a patient safety issue, and how can I walk it through? Just walk it through. And if anybody wants more information on that, I can help you guys with that.
And you also want to look at patient outcomes too. Are there more falls happening in your facility? Are there more bed sores happening? Is there stuff that's happening that shouldn't, like more codes because changes in conditions are not being identified quickly enough, more rapid response team responses, those kind of things you can show objectively that this wouldn't be happening if we were properly staffed.
Patient safety. It all comes back to patient safety. Also, I think they have to make it this complicated on purpose, right? Because I'll be honest, this all confuses me. Anyone else? I'm like, what? It's just a mess. Also, Aaron said, how can I ask about all of this during an interview? And I think Noralia nailed it for you. You just walk into the interview and you're like, hi, can you please explain your thoughts on the capitalist overlords that only care about money and not safety or happiness? Thanks, in the interview, and just see what they say. Just see what happens to their face. But it's a mess. But that was very helpful. Thank you, Lorie and Adriane, for trying to explain it to us. We tried.
I put a bunch of links in the chat for HHS, Health and Human Services, Whistleblower Protections, OSHA. Luckily I was 39 when I became a nurse, so 40 can be considered age discrimination. So I'm not gonna lie, I did lean on that on occasion. That was an easy win. Over 40, that's so if you're over 40 at a worker, lean on that part of the EOC.
Over 40? That seems insane.
So
like
it's
way too
the
young.
only right. So I know it is. So now that I'm 55, right? I'm like ready for a wheelchair or something. I need like my DME.
I refuse to believe that you're 55.
I do too.
Thanks. And I've had no work done. Yeah, I mean, so if you are able, so like workplace harassment is basically over 40. And this has been a hard part where I've had to explain to workers who are under 40. I'm like, I always would ask people, how old are you? You're under 40. If you're over 40, great. All right. We're going to file a workplace, harassment charge, because it's not ageism per se. That's not how the law is written, but that's the only really kind of generic workplace discrimination law. It's over 40.
If you're under 40, you're out of luck. Also,
if you're under 40, you better be working for a union.
Yeah. Yeah. Go for it. Matt Stewart and Daniel Romero, thanks for becoming channel members. I appreciate you. Go join the Discord server where we have random conversations about nothing to do with nursing. Right now, we're deeply invested in random lawsuits that have nothing to do with nursing. And
we were talking about social media, but it is, it is just all interconnected about what is it we're speaking about. So again, know your rights and just, think twice, save things into a draft, think about what you're posting, what's the purpose of it, what's the function of it. And, because you just don't want to cross that line where it can be, one, you have public outcry, people are going to think you're obnoxious or it's not, right, or distasteful, or are you crossing that line of, giving out more information or proprietary information. And, because I really cringe when I see people with their badge. We all know come on, the logos of big hospitals and big healthcare, pretty easy to figure out. So don't put your name and job. I mean, I know people do it on LinkedIn, right? We all have our employers and history there. However, you might have to be more selective. Absolutely do not put your job anywhere on your social media ever, especially Facebook. And here's the, it's like, why? Here's the other thing, you guys, do not use your internal email of your hospital system to email anybody else. Forward those emails to your personal email. That's fine. They're not going to be able to do anything about it.
Yes,
Forward
they do.
those.
They can track
they can.
that.
They can,
Yeah.
no, they can track it. Yeah, no, I worked in informatics. They can track it. They could track your keypad strokes by time and date and second. But what I usually tell people to do is just, one, you don't have to be, the EOC just came down on a case basically like that employers have to pay workers for the time they're logging into computer systems, even if that login is how they clock in. So that's been an interesting case. So when your employer's saying you have to get emails and you have to do this, it's like, well, I'm just going to forward it to my personal, right? So, I mean, I would always forward things to my personal email, and then I would speak to other people from my personal email. So don't collapse that work email with any other kind of communication. And also don't rely on that as being, oh, well, I have it in email, what they said, or this happened. Well, do you have it printed? Do you have it in your own personal email? Because your employer can also erase your emails. We did it all the time.
That's terrifying.
Yes. Every single thing is tracked now in these especially single sign-on systems. So just make sure that you're getting paid. Don't do work off the clock. Don't do work from home. Never, ever, ever answer an employer email unless you are like being paid on call and that's part of your job. Do not do it after hours, because then you set that yourself up that now this is what you do. Keep your boundaries. Your boundaries are the rule book for life, you guys. Boundaries are the rule book for life. If you have the boundaries, it just does it fit in the boundary or not? Be clear about that.
And back to the email situation, they can read everything that you write. So, and most importantly, do not have your license renewal go to your employer's email, because if you're not there, you're going to get something and won't be able to respond. So,
Interesting. That's a good
have
point.
it be your personal email. And then one other thing that Adriane was saying that I wanted to comment on, and that is, HIPAA violations. And Adriane was spot on. Don't let anybody know where you work and things like that, because they do research you, especially if you're applying for a new job. And what happened with this Katie Duke is she posted a picture of a person. She titled it "Man versus Train," and it was just a room after that man was transferred. But because people knew where she worked, she was on TV, and because I don't know how many people get hit by trains in New York, but probably not very many, it was easily identifiable of that patient. So you have to be careful and just don't take any pictures in the hospital. I have had nurses that they've confiscated their phones and looked at their pictures because they thought they were taking pictures of patients, and they weren't. So just be very, very careful everything that you post, and don't take any pictures of patients or where you work, and try not to say anything about where you work, because it could come back to haunt you.
Now, it was interesting because I think that was a repost. One of the physicians took that photo and she reposted it, but the physician didn't have any kickback, any, any bad repercussions from that, but she did.
Yeah.
So, but of course, he's not an employee of the hospital. Most likely he's, contracted in his medical group to provide services in the ER, whereas the nurse is under the authority of the hospital as an employee. I thought that was an interesting little twist.
Yeah.
And even if you have like a private group, some hospitals or units have private Facebook groups for people. Don't post anything there either. That is not your channel. That's not your proprietary right. And it will come back to bite you. Like these nurses were talking about a funeral on Facebook because it was somebody that I cared about, but that's a HIPAA violation.
So speaking of Facebook, I have this is a lighter, just funny, funny in a like unbelievable sort of way. When Radonavot thing was happening, I had like posted a link to an article, and I had made I had posted it with a comment that said like, people keep on hearing about all these mistakes that nurses make, but nobody ever hears about all of the mistakes that nurses catch, that doctors make, or that pharmacists make, and stuff like that, because we catch them and we fix them before they ever get anywhere else. And nobody ever hears, like nobody's hearing about those types of things. Anyway, so I just made that post. I don't have my employer on my Facebook or anything like that. So 3 months, literally 3 months later, my assistant nurse manager let me know that she had gotten called in to the office because she had liked my post about that. And she was getting in trouble for just reacting to it. And I was just like,
that's ridiculous.
Unbelievable. So like, I didn't get in trouble, but she was getting reprimanded for just reacting. She didn't even make a comment. She just like hit the like button. So
on that vein, don't like anything patient related. So like in peds, we would have patients that we had, and you saw them for years, right? And so a lot of, I mean, I wouldn't be friends with, it's a weird situation because you do form relationships with people. And so I will just say a lot of people were Facebook friends with patients' family members because the family was like, I'd like to keep in contact with you. Like, and a lot of nurses were like, okay, like I've taken care of you for years. Like I can understand easily how that happens. And people would get pulled in all the time to HR because a family member would post a picture and all the nurse did was like it. And that was not like no. And then you would get in trouble for that. So caution, my friends, caution. Never use your hospital as the background of like a TikTok or whatever. Canva has just green screen, my dudes. Green screen and go in Canva and pick a random hospital.
Seriously.
Like, hospital background. Like, did you know Bridget's not in a hospital right now? Mind blowing. Neither is Mr. Midwife.
That's such a good point too, Liz, because and I think we are also trained how to address when we get close to patients. I mean, I work with chronically ill folks who I saw, several times a year until they passed, that's the nature of telemetry and step down. And, and how do you handle that? And I think that's a whole skill set and maybe, something that some really smart person can work on, how to address those issues when patients want to cross those lines. And they're just, or maybe you also see them in home health. I would see my patients in home health also because I had a second job. So sometimes, then they would have a different knowledge of me, right? And their families would, and maybe they could have taken a photo of me in their home even, right? So it's really just important to have boundaries and be clear and just say, professionally, I'm not allowed to do that. That's not advised for us. So, have boundaries, minimally have a burner phone,
A burner phone for everything. Also, Lorie just had to pop out. So definitely go check out her website if you need legal advice. Okay, friends, which I feel like we all need a lot of legal advice. You can go check that out. She also has a YouTube channel going over all the legal things. So just go check that out as she exited. And unfortunately, Scott's here. So that also happened. Thanks for being here, Scott. And Sandy became a member. Thanks, Sandy. Welcome. Scott, how's your day going?
Not bad, actually. Wasn't sure. Had some friction at school and trying to get a hold of my instructors and wasn't sure if they were avoiding my calls and am I on the shit list? Anyway, had a really good call just now. That's why I'm late with my professor and things are very, very good. So thank you for asking.
Scott's going to be able to make a really good YouTube video about how to navigate grad school.
Yeah, when you're a pain in the butt like me, you come up with some unique, you create your own little bumps in the road sometimes. And but we're all just trying to be better people and get along with it. I mean, some of us don't get along with others as well as some of us do. So we're
I feel like everyone on this panel probably could come with that opening. Like,
not a team player, difficult to work with sometimes, and but then other people are like, no, you're
Not mixed
great, I
well
can
with
always rely on you, you're brilliant, blah blah blah. And other people like you are a pain in my ass. So we're all just, I think, trying to learn how to be better people in the world, and this is one of my little bumps. But anyway, great topic, by the way, because as I wondered if I'm being scrutinized by my school, I had to think about what's on social media. And my class has a Facebook group, and we talk as students do. And when I talked to one of my instructors, I said, the whole class is wondering about this question. I thought about it. Well, wait, let me stop you there. You guys are supposed to be doing this independently. I'm like, we are, but we're students. And so we're going to say, hey, how did you understand this question? How did you do on the last test? Who are you going to take next semester? It's like when you were a student, anyway. Yeah, so we're and I went back and I said to everybody, just be careful what you say on here. Let's be careful who we admit in case the faculty wants to come in and start snooping around and seeing what we're talking about. And I actually went back and deleted a lot of stuff. And I also cleaned up my YouTube channel just to be on the safe side, which is a shame because I think I mostly said good things about my school. But at some point, if they were really trying to nail me to the cross, they would come and say, hey, you're really revealing too much about what's in these classes. And bye. So just to be honest, I think everything is fine, but you do have to be careful what you put out there, even if it's good, because they want to protect I'm talking about school now, not work, but they want to protect the integrity of the exam. So you can't say, yeah, on this last, I'm studying for this test, and we have this and this and this, and you can't tell them what anything that's printed is owned by the university. So you share too much of that in too much detail, and you could run afoul. So, and work, when you work for places, they have ownership over a lot of things that they put out, their policies and procedures, all their educational materials, and then the whole HIPAA piece that I heard you all just talking about. So social media's changed everything over the last 20 years, and we're still learning how to deal with it and keep ourselves safe.
Well, and Scott and I were in a conversation yesterday with somebody, and this person had said that they, early on in their YouTube career, had posted a couple of videos that I really struggled today, I really messed up today, I made a mistake today, and they were told by somebody, take that down, because any lawyer gets a hold of that in the future, you just proved your own incompetence.
Yep.
So this person, I guess, went and cleaned up their YouTube channel as well. So like Scott said, we just have to be so careful what we put out there.
Alert for Kelsey to get on her soapbox.
We're ready.
It'll bite you in the ass.
I am so, if there is one thing in this entire world that I get like fired up the most about, it's the fact it's the healthcare professionals, nurses, doctors, etc., being put on this pedestal that we don't ask for. I don't want to be called a hero. Please don't call me that. I am not perfect. I don't have superhuman powers. Like, we are just people. Like, I'm literally just a person. And so, man, that kind of stuff really, really gets me fired up.
So
Agreed.
You wouldn't want to be fired because there's a picture of you on the internet in a bikini dancing at a beach party.
Well,
because it's
I would have been fired
unprofessional.
by that. That would have already happened.
That may or may not have already happened. That may
Look, we all know about the Nurses Gone Wild.
Nurses Gone Wild, yes, exactly. Well, I did that video on how to not lose your license, and talking to the person at the California board, she made it pretty clear that things that happen outside the hospital pretty much don't have any bearing on your license unless it's like a DUI or domestic violence or some of these serious felonies. But otherwise, if you want to dance naked on the beach on your off time, that's fine. When you come to work, you need to give safe and effective patient care, and that's supposed to be what it's all about.
That's how it should be.
Those are the videos Scott deleted, by the way, in case you're curious.
It's me dancing naked on the beach with only a stethoscope.
And your red toolbox.
In my red toolbox.
Oh my
Running down the
goodness.
beach in slow motion like Baywatch.
Where's your
I'll be
toolbox,
there
Scott?
for
It's
you.
missing.
Yeah,
That
the-
visual.
The Baywatch
You're
theme
welcome,
plays in the background.
everyone.
Thanks, Liz.
Not
Yeah.
a problem.
What was I going to say? She did talk about a little bit about social media, and I'm trying to remember what she said. It was just, so people that are like, oh my God, I got so drunk last night. Now I have to go to work. Not a good idea. Not a good idea. You're able to drink at home on your off time, but let's not make a post about going to work hungover. That's a completely different thing. Yeah. Or like you said, I made a huge mistake at work today. I feel so bad. Not for public consumption.
Mm-hmm.
No.
And it's really important that you are clear. Let me tell you, I had to actually tell people, because even if you look at my Facebook, I don't post a lot of personal stuff. It's very important that you're clear with the people you're going out with, right? You want or don't want them to post as far as photos, group photos. You guys are out drinking, you're out, whatever, at the strip club, wherever you might be, who knows, right? That you also, here's my boundaries. Will you please respect this and not have me in any of your photos? So that's kind of my rule of thumb, because I had to be on the down low for a while in life, and, you know, was not quite in the witness protection program, but maybe I was, I don't know. So I just had to be really low key off social. And I'm just glad I just, you know, I don't really post a lot anymore on that stuff. So it also, just be aware, if you're going to go out and party and everybody knows, you know, there's 50 people or 100 people from your hospital, your employer, or maybe it's your boss's event, you know, maybe it's something for your boss. Practice discretion. You know, don't drink as much that night, right? Don't imbibe as much. Don't maybe engage in everything that everybody's engaging in. You've got to really practice prudence and protect your license and your standing as a nurse, because I have seen nurses get marched off for breathalyzer test, get blood tested for alcohol. You know, especially when you stay out late, you got to be up at work at 6 a.m. I mean, how long does the alcohol take to get out of your system?
1 drink an hour. It's my chapter right now. I'm studying for.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, if the bar closes at 2 or 1, and then you go to somebody's house and drink till 3, and you got to be at work at 6, you're going to be intoxicated. And yeah, so just be careful and be mindful. And, you know, it's great to see all these people on social media, nurses and everybody in healthcare, but let's elevate our profession and educate the public, you know, of what they can do. Have the call to action. I just feel like we don't do enough calls to action for the public.
On the other hand, too,
we don't know what to do. You don't have to ask for.
What I can't remember if it was a med student or if it was a resident, but in regards to like the double standards, what I would be a nurse practitioner is not who I am. It's part of me, right? But then it's like this, I believe it was the med school, but this physician had a phenomenal body. She was in great shape. She had posted like bikini pictures, and she had got in trouble for posting that. And
I remember that.
Her argument was like, would this be the same conversation if it was a male? And this is me on like my time off. Like, so I've had comments too, where, for example, I'm wearing like this top today, and people will be like, you're a professional, dress like one on my YouTube. How dare you wear what you're wearing? Like, I'm not at work. So I do think that unfortunately it does impact. So if people go on my Instagram, because it's an employer looking through my Instagram and they see me in like bathing suit pictures or whatever, right? It may prevent me from getting a job. But also it's unfortunate that a nurse practitioner is not everything that I am. And I'm not the kind of nurse practitioner that just wants to post NP content. You know, it's a double-edged sword. It's just a pet peeve of mine.
Speaking of pictures like that, I'm sorry Lorie had to leave us, because my question, somebody brought it up. They can take your phone at work. I'm guessing this is your personal property.
If it's not I think if it's your personal phone, they can't, right? But who knows, like if you refuse to turn it over, can they fire you for, you know?
I don't know, but
anything.
All I got to say is,
you know what I mean?
This may be giving away. You're allowed to have your own pictures on here of whatever you want. And if you're an adult and you want to send an attractive picture to another adult, you're allowed to do that. There's nothing really wrong with that. There's
What are you talking about, Scott?
Well, there used to be a joke.
Could you go into more detail for us?
You asked for it.
Confused.
So I used to talk to my
Do
personal
not tempt him.
trainer. I used to talk to my personal trainer, when we're training, and we're just like, yeah, that anytime you look through, if you have a gay man show you his phone and there's pictures, if you start swiping, you will see a penis. So if you don't want them to see it, don't hand them your
So
phone.
many images from you today, Scott.
I just looked. I don't have any kind of pictures on here. I wouldn't show my mom.
Noralia said she wants photo evidence.
I have nothing in here I'm embarrassed about, I will say. You like my little blue-footed booby? Anyway, but there are things on there you don't want your employer to see, which are perfectly legitimate for you to have as an adult. So it bothers me that they would be able to say, let me see your phone, see if you've been taking some pictures of oh, look at that. Didn't know that about you. Okay, that bothers me. Unless you have, and the law surrounding cell phones is evolving, because the police used to be able to just take it, and now I think it's considered, in some places, considered more protected information, and they have to have a warrant and things like that. You don't have to unlock it for the police. Anyway, so I can't imagine that your work would just be able to do that. So don't let them be pressured, just like don't be pressured.
Yeah, they'd have to cut off my finger, sure.
I'll email Lorie and I'll ask her. I'll be like,
they can't. So just so you guys know, so yeah, your employer can go through your locker at work. That area is typically not protected. So if you have, you should not be having anything
right here
that can be inferred as stealing from your employer, other supplies or anything.
That's a good point. I had a nurse I used to work with. I'm like, man, we're out of Coban. He's like, hang on. Go to a locker, all this Coban, all these dressing supplies.
Or
all kinds,
a lot of nurses would keep their chart, like their written reports until they came back. Right. But make sure you never leave the hospital with any of that information. There's also been some case law in cases about cars. What you're, can you sleep in your car on your unpaid break on the hospital property? The hospitals can pass laws that say you cannot do that. I worked at a hospital. We had a case where a nurse got fired for sleeping on the break. We got her job back, but then we had to agree to some other rules. But so they wouldn't allow people to sleep in their cars, even in the parking lot, on their unpaid break.
How? Why?
They're still technically on the clock?
Because
people have way too much time.
Unpaid.
No, it's unpaid. So it's like your meal break. So your half hour, your 30-minute meal. It was their property, so they can decide what happens on their property.
That level of micromanaging just drives me crazy.
Yeah, the fact that you have that much time.
Come on.
That's why I was in HR 50 times.
Listen, I'm an introvert, so I had a rotation once with a physician. He was elderly, and I'm an old soul anyway. So during his lunch break, his first day, I saw he went out to his car and rolled down the windows and passed out. I was like, yes, that's what I'm going to do too. Like we would just go out during our lunch break. I don't want to talk to anybody. We're both in our cars just passed out, and then we get out after break. He's like, good nap. I was like, yeah, good nap.
Yeah, if they do cut off your finger, though, maybe go and have your phone locked with the code. Then they have to know the number instead of just putting your finger out.
But some of this privacy stuff goes a little beyond that. There's healthcare providers that they suffer from depression or anxiety or something. They won't see a psychiatrist in their own town, and they will not have their meds filled at the Walmart in their own town, because if they get found out that they're on Zoloft, for heaven's sakes, they're considered mentally unsafe and they'll be fired, terminated, whatever will happen to them. It's none of your business that I'm on a med to help me feel better so that I can actually function in your defunct system.
The number of people when I came out and was talking about like being on Zoloft who said, do not say that, because they have gotten in trouble at their job as nurse practitioners for admitting they were on some kind of medicine was astounding. Like that didn't even cross my mind, but a whole bunch of people were like, I can't believe you said that. Like, I mean, my employer didn't care, but like, they were like, mine found out, like I talked about it or whatever. And they said that could make it seem like you're incompetent.
Yes.
So
crazy.
You can't,
That's interesting.
like you shouldn't be seen as being able to do that, which is insane. Like just absolutely insane.
On my unit, we make jokes about all of us being on meds. Like,
that's so weird.
Who else? Raise your hand if you're on Wellbutrin. Raise your hand if you take Buspar. Like, it's just
that used to be our welcome.
All of us are.
Yeah, like when the new nurses came, we're like, welcome. What is your form of store-bought serotonin? They're like, I'm not on anything. We're like, all right, come see me in a month.
We have a Prozac salt lick in the waiting room,
Yeah.
just so you know.
We're like, oh no, you will be. Just give it time. It's fine.
If you're happy and
Also,
you know it, shake your meds.
exactly.
Oh, but
Really.
it's just, you know,
Oh.
healthcare workers, like Chelsea was saying, we're supposed to be superhuman. We don't take pee breaks. We don't eat. We don't sleep.
Bad.
We don't have a life outside the hospital, because every time the hospital short staffed, they call us and say, can you work an extra shift? Sure, I haven't had a day off in 6 months, but I'll come in. We're not supposed to be depressed.
Don't do it.
We're not supposed to be human.
And
I don't
that's
want to be
where
superhuman. I'm having a hard time being myself, let alone.
Even more
Chelsea
reason to
was
keep that
saying-
barrier between that boundary between work and home.
Yes.
Just whatever you can do to keep that barrier. So work doesn't know you have Instagram. You don't do Instagram about your work. You got your friends at work and you got your friends that you party with. I think that there's probably some wisdom to that.
Yeah.
Well, there's part of me though that wants to break down, like my feeling is I want to break down that barrier. I want people to be able to come to realize the things that we know as nurses. Like, I know that the doctors that I work with, as good as doctors as they are flawed people. And and I want everybody to be able to know that and like be comfortable with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's probably asking too much of the world.
And a couple of the videos I have on my channel.
In hospitals.
A couple of videos I have on my channel, I talk about certain topics, and I have a difficult time getting through them because I'm human, because I hurt too, because I've lived through this trauma too. But we're not supposed to be human, and that's frustrating.
That's why that term
Well, you're changing
hero
that. By
is so
talking about it,
toxic.
you're changing that.
There was an article, so I can't remember, but there was an article that basically was discussing why calling us heroes is just it's almost like it's setting us up to gaslight and guilt us into accepting these atrocious conditions. Like, oh, you're a hero, so you just do what needs to be done with minimal resources and minimal staffing. Like, no, we're healthcare professionals. We're not heroes.
1000%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think there's a
Agreed.
company that sells
And I
like
think
merchandise.
it might
that says,
also
I'm not your hero.
You might also
Oh yeah. I'll find it. I know who it is. It's Ava.
it might
what's her
also have
faces?
the other effect it might have is keeping people away from healthcare professions because they don't think of themselves as perfect. They're like, I have a past, I have tattoos, I do that. You know what? You could still be a great asset, and this may be a very fulfilling career for you.
And some of the best, I think some of the best workers are
unless you have a nose ring, then I mean, just can't.
Is that your line?
Nose ring or dyed hair? Obviously, you're stupid. I mean,
I want blue hair so bad. I want blue hair so bad, like Carol G, and I can't.
But they say they suck your brain cells out to dye it, Bridget.
Are you going to do it all, or are you just going to do like one strand?
I would love to do all, but it's not professional. So,
according to who?
Can't
Everyone.
say.
I don't know. Oh, yeah.
I unfortunately cannot say.
Trick question.
Good boundaries. Good boundaries.
I wanted on that issue of hair and tattoos and nose rings. So of course I had an issue with my job. That was one of the areas they harassed me about was my tattoo, and I would have the director of nursing, because she had nothing better to do, find me on the floor and announce that I would be terminated if I didn't cover my tattoo. So I refused to wear a sleeve or anything. And I would say, please do. Should we go to HR right now and you can just fire me? Please, I'm begging you on my knees, fire me for having a tattoo right now. And so one of the things I was always really good at is I would take a lot of group photos with my coworkers. And I would also make note of like if they had tattoos on their neck or behind their ear or other places or on their fingers or hands where they really couldn't cover them up. So your employer has to enforce the rules equally. So even if they pass some dumb law or dumb rule, right, then they have to enforce it equally. It has to be enforceable and it has to be enforced equally. So that's really important. So if somebody else or a manager or somebody would have blue hair, I would always make sure I did a selfie with that person and that I had that record. I always had receipts, you guys. And that was really what saved me over and over again, to the point that like, they just, at one point, I feel like there was times when they would just give up, right? I mean, the 26 managers was in part because of all those of us who were pretty strong union at some point, because they just, you're not going to come in and harass and browbeat me over stupid things when you've got some boring room and my tattoo is beautiful and it's in, the patients like it. Nobody complains about it. It's not offensive. It's not a, gang tattoo. But so just make sure that the rules are being enforced properly and that you document. Like, for example, I had gotten written up for no call, no show, right? One time in 12 years, I forgot I was working. Boom, they come bring me in, final written, notice, you'll be fired next time. And I knew immediately that they were going to do this the minute I overslept and didn't show up. So I called some friends of mine who had worked in the hospital a long time and on different units. And I said, hey, can you tell me, have you ever heard of anybody who, was there ever anybody who didn't come to work a bunch of times and they were still working? And did they get fired? Oh yeah, this person, that person over this year. Oh yeah, this person was a no call, no show 26 times. Oh, okay, cool. Went into HR, had that information. They were like, ripped it up. See ya. You got us again, Adriane, because I come with receipts. Know your coworkers. The better the more you know people and you're nice to each other, people will help each other out, back each other up.
For sure. And also, yes, God's girl, Adriane is a rebel. We love her for it. Her face is in every single nursing office everywhere. Whenever anyone's trying to get hired, it's just Adriane's face with a big X through it. Be like, no.
The facial recognition, right? No, we're going to. Did you see the comment I wrote earlier on the stream? I was like, let's play a game of like, can Adriane get hired in a hospital? Like maybe we should do a fundraiser or something, make it a challenge. I'll just go around to a bunch of hospitals and try and get hired. See
immediately you walk through the doors and the little alarm goes off. It's like beep, 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 beep. Red alert.
Chelsea's right though, I think, and I did a video on tattoos and nose rings and all that kind of stuff, and it came up there too. Chelsea's right. Sometimes it can be a way to relate to patients. Their tattoos and our tattoos, they can be conversation starters with pediatric kids. Anything colorful that takes their mind out of the moment can be a distraction. And if that's your, your flower tattoo, your Mickey Mouse tattoo, or, your little Tigger on your shoulder, whatever, it doesn't have to be. And it's amazing to me that it's still an issue. When I was doing that video last year, I came across an article about Indiana University Health System has just lifted their ban or their requirement that you have to cover your tattoos. And I interviewed a nurse. Wow. I can finally show my tattoos. And I'm like, it's freaking 2021.
How innovative. Here we are.
I know I'm on the West Coast. I'm in a liberal part of the country, but still, that really took me by surprise.
For sure. I also wanted to show this super chat. Thanks, Banana Farron, Farron, for your super chat. I appreciate you. I agree. If only hospitals hadn't gotten rid of LPNs and CNAs. I agree. I'm not sure what this was in reference to in a vacuum. I'm sorry, but I agree. I think they chopped a bunch of people. I learned like everything I know in terms of med-surg nursing from the LPNs that were on my floor. They like ran that place, and then they had all the baby RNs that came in, and then suddenly we were supposed to like sign off on all of their stuff, and it was the dumbest thing I'd ever seen. So agreed. And Jaden, thanks for becoming a channel member. Thanks, friends. But yeah.
I think Nora's
tattoos.
I think Nora's teasing me. She's like, yes, Tigger is current and up-to-date child interest. Okay, I know Tigger, but I don't know what the kids are into these days. A few years ago, I knew it was Frozen, and I could actually sing that song that the snowman sings for the kids. I've forgotten it.
I can recite. I just feel for all nurses who worked in peds, all of us who were nurses during the height of Frozen, because we have deep trauma in the fact that we can recite the entire movie verbatim, like
in summer.
Yeah, it would like end. You're like, let's watch something else, and they're like, again, Frozen, again, like anything.
Kids are like that, man. They're like OCD. They want to watch the same thing. When my niece and nephew were little, they had a video of a DVD of Country Bears, Disney's Country Bears. Every time, all day long, Country Bears. I don't know. Do you want to watch something else? No, Country Bears.
No.
Okay, I get it. It's familiar. It's soothing. That's fine. The adults are going crazy, but okay.
Yeah, we're on a Super Kitties kick here in our household. Super Kitties. That's exactly what you do in your life. Don't recommend. 0 out of 10 recommend. All right. Any final imparting words of wisdom we can give to the people?
Like Noralia said, just don't exist.
Melt away.
That's what I was going to say. Just
Hey, what about, we didn't bring this up. What
Just,
about going by a different name at work and at home?
Yes, that's what I said. Just make up a different name for yourself. I wish.
By your middle name. Yeah,
Yeah.
go by your middle name in
Middle
one place.
name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's legal.
Yep.
You're
I
not,
would have
you're
changed.
not, you're not taking an alias or anything, but
Yep. Done something totally different. Because even though I don't ever technically share my last name, it's out there and people know what it is. And I have had interviews for like nurse practitioner, like remote things. And they have told me that if I wanted to move forward in the interview process, I needed to no longer speak about political things on my YouTube channel that they discovered and I had nothing about my YouTube channel on my resume, but they Googled my name and found it and didn't want to they were like, well, you won't be able to discuss. I'm like, well, I'm not going to ever say like where I work. And they're like, we would never want it getting back to us that, you support those things.
that's
evil.
surprising because I've been with you almost a year now, Liz. I still don't know your last name.
It's a secret.
The internet. You're not very good at interneting, Scott, I'm afraid.
I'm very good at interneting, but I mean, I could see where they could search for your full name and then find you. But searching for just nurse, maybe I'll try that. Nurse, or I could just ask you when we get done with this.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean,
I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
Everybody subscribe to all of our channels, support us so that we can support you more and make some money in some other way than bedside, except for Scott, who
because we're going to be blacklisted and can't make living any other way.
Yep. We will not be able to do anything.
We're actually just going to start our own practice and our own company somehow. I mean, this is a sad part, right? So these hospitals are so overly hyper conscious about. It's so interesting, right? Because at the same time, in any other context, like not me, I mean, I'm not big, but some people would be almost celebrities, right? You get an NBA star, you get a baseball star, you get an actor, some singer. Oh, they're going to come in the hospital. Well, there's a lot of social media people that are, just as big, right? And so it's just mind boggling how sensitive these hospitals and healthcare facilities are to PR. So, that's unfortunate. Maybe I'll let you guys know. I'm going to try and get a job at a hospital. I'm going to let you guys know how that goes. And we'll see. Maybe we'll do a fundraiser or something if I get a job, or we'll do a raffle. Pick the hospital that hires me. I don't know. Like, can you choose who will hire me? HCA for sure. Like, if I could get a job at HCA, I would be so stoked. Like,
the odds on the HCA are a long shot. They pay 36 to 1.
That's even bigger. Yeah, it's even bigger odds, bigger odds for sure. But, be empowered and continue, you guys. I mean, the call to action really is get in contact with your state representatives, right? And best wishes on the job. And your federal representatives, like, continue to write letters and have meetings. This is off season for a lot of state legislative sessions, or we're going to go into off season. And that's when these folks are in their offices taking meetings. Get together with your neighbors, your PTA, your organizations, whatever groups, your Moose Lodge, whoever it is, and go set up a meeting and say, I want to advocate for healthcare workers. I want to advocate for nurses. I want you to support nurse to patient ratios. I want you to support whistleblower laws, right? Go to California, look up some of the links and say, we'd like to codify this. Is there some reason why you would not do that? Right. And start looking at who's donating to some of these politicians and start electing people who are about patients and patient care and about workers, because we are all workers, no matter what. That joins us all together, no matter what we believe in. We are all workers. Except for Liz.
And I just my final thought. I just want to reiterate what I said earlier. The healthcare system is broken. We all agree on that. Every one of us agree on that. Us influencers on YouTube and other platforms, we're telling you what the problem is. We're telling you how to fix it. Are you listening to us?
Ominous.
That's what we call a pregnant pause. Ironic, isn't it?
Are you listening to us?
And on that happy note. But for real, just be careful on the interwebs. Don't have any other real solution, because you can't really say anything, because then they don't hire you. Once again, this was just to get everyone just as mad as me.
You do your best. You got to live your life. You got to live your life, and you try to be careful. And sometimes you're going to You're going to misjudge what to put on something, you know. And if it happens, it happens. You deal with it. Do the best you can. You keep those boundaries and to, you know, not step on toes and break rules. Mistakes happen. Do your best.
But I love to break rules.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I don't know breaking rules. I love to push
challenge.
boundaries, challenge things,
I support
challenging the status quo.
Especially when the status quo makes absolute no sense. You know, like this just when we know,
because if we continue to do it, it's never going to change. Like if we continue,
exactly.
And so,
and like that's what Adriane had said before, that this generation, especially like Gen Z, it's almost like what I wish was happening during my time is happening now. Like there's more strikes, they're sticking up for themselves. And I think social media is helping kind of spread the word like, oh, you know what? I'm not the only person that thinks this is insane, that this is a systemic problem.
Well, I think, Bridget, you need to start by doing just a blue streak in your hair. And then when they see how beautiful it looks on you, they're going to realize how silly a rule that was. And that's how you're going to be the change you want to see in the world. What do you think?
We can hope.
Or you could do a temporary dye, if nothing else. So if it is a big deal, the next day you wash it
You know what? I bought a little like streak at Target, like in the little kid section. That's like, I'll wear it next time. It's just, it's temporary. It's not permanent. I'll put it in my hair next time. I'll be like, look, here's my streak. Here we go.
Hair chalk.
Yeah. Or even at Walgreens, they have the little spray cans of color that you can just, you know. I think I have blue in there. Anyway.
This is a slippery slope.
We're going to have a blue hair. We're going to have a Smurf day.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have it. We'll have steam.
I actually was going to dye my hair blue, but I'm waiting to do face like headshots, and then I'm going to might show up.
Well, we'll all do it together, you and me and Bridget.
We'll do solidarity with Bridget. Blue hair. The blue hair crew.
Weren't we gonna have like theme days at one point? We were gonna do like funny hat day live stream, and I don't know. I thought we had talked about some themes before. We may have to revisit. We will revisit that in our next board meeting.
Our next board meeting, yes.
The next Fanny board meeting. The next AANI board meeting.
My husband just messaged me that our downstairs toilet seat, my children broke it off. So that's how the night I'm about to go face.
I mean, toilet seats are overrated.
I'm like, why? Why?
Squat. Stand on it and squat.
And you
I found the sticker that I was looking for forever for the last half of this conversation. That's "Don't Call Me Hero." I think I posted the link in the chat.
Let me go get it. Boop, boop, boop. In the private chat? I don't see it.
No, I will put it in the private chat.
On YouTube?
Because I can't. Yes, hold on one
There
second.
That one.
They probably need to come and tell me that they destroyed our house, our toilet seat.
I thought you were going to say the downstairs bathroom's on fire or something.
Oh, no.
You should probably go.
I wouldn't be shocked.
You should probably go.
You need to leave right now.
Huh?
Just make sure you hide the ammonia and the bleach, Liz.
No, I just can't. The things that children do with toilets. I'm like, why? Look, Mom, I fit 15 diapers in this. It's so absorbent.
They're at child level. That's
Tell Joe we appreciate him loaning us to you for the hours that we're here.
Yes. Thanks, Joe.
We appreciate you, Joe. Thank you. We love Liz.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to go deal with that. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Everyone, do go check out all of their wonderful social medias. They share all of these insightful things over there on theirs, and you should go and follow them and do all of the things. Until next time, friends. Don't know what we're talking about on Tuesday, but we'll figure it out. Hope you have a lovely rest of your day and that your toilet seats don't break, your children don't stuff diapers into them, and that you don't get fired from your job for, speaking up and saying things. Remember that you are not alone. Everyone else is dealing with this crap too. We're going to survive. It's going to be fine. You are more than enough, and you can do hard things. Bye, friends. Kaylin.
Cue the music.